Thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Today we're going to be talking about the Coaching Kata. So the Coaching Kata is a really fantastic platform for helping people in solving problems. And what's really great is it blends problem solving, which is what we do in Lean, with a real personal one-on-one touch type of effort. So, okay, some folks. Make sure everyone's muted, and we'll go ahead and. All right, thank you for that. All right. So what's really great about the Coaching Kata, and part of the reason that I'm talking about it today, is that the Coaching Kata is really great, especially when we're working remotely, because sometimes it can be really hard to solve problems that we feel like need to have a bunch of people in a room. The type of typical stuff that Lean does, the big projects with big wind-up and all the expectations and data gathering and all the conversations that we have. The Coaching Kata is about having a one-on-one conversation, solving problems using that, which is much easier to do when teleconferencing. So, for example, you don't have people tripping on each other trying to talk or trying to take turns and handle complicated tools over the internet. It's a platform that allows us to make improvements, but in a one-on-one focused gathering. Right now, I am probably the foremost expert on the Coaching Kata in the state of Vermont. Justin provides some introduction to the Coaching Kata through his Orange Belt class, which is available to anyone that has at least a white belt in Lean. And, well, I guess technically the two first classes. But I've been doing coaching now for most of this year. I have 5 people that I've been coaching. So my hope is that I can translate a little bit of that practical experience as well as talk about what the Coaching Kata is and the benefits it can provide to all of you today. So first, let's talk a little bit about some testimonials and reviews from the Coaching Kata experience. Let me know if this sounds a little bit like you or the kind of person you want to be. I've had a lot of stress around this task, but that stress decreased a lot within a few weeks of coaching Improvement Kata. I like coaching because it empowers me. I feel the difference. She's taking the initiative to make things happen. That's from a learner supervisor. So it's not just talking about benefits for you, but benefits for everyone around you and the tasks that you're improving. Coaching Kata gets me unstuck when I'm overwhelmed. Different approaches, testing out how to improve things is helpful. Having weekly check-ins helps me make a little bit of progress. So these are all experiences from people that have been coached over the last 4 or 5 months. And it really strikes me how beneficial I found the experience as a coach and how beneficial the learners have found the experience as they grow, develop, and make improvements. So what is the Coaching Kata? It starts first, we have to dissect a little bit of Japanese, which is I think, kind of a flaw in a lot of the way Lean terminology is used. I call it the Coaching Kata because it's a very specific kind of coaching, but Kata itself just means form. So it's about practicing. It's basically coaching practice because there's a structured, distinct, repeated approach that is used in every coaching session. And we call it the Coaching Kata because it's comprised of 2 elements. One is coaching, which is a very general term, and the Improvement Kata, which is a very specific term for solving problems. So I think you all know what coaching is, at least at a base level. So coaching is a guided learning experience. It's about helping someone else to grow. And in the workplace, it's primarily an agreement between 2 professionals. You have a learner and you have a coach. The learner commits to growth and development and commits to the time that it requires and the change of behavior that's required sometimes to improve as a person. And I take that very seriously with everyone that I coach. I want them to know that I'm there for them, I'm their advocate, and I enable them to learn. and I do what I can in order to make the things they need to have happen. Coaching itself is about listening, providing expertise, and growing the learner. If I am telling someone what I think they should do or not do, that's not me being a good coach. Coaching is about getting people to grow, asking the right questions, and learning from those experiences. So I mentioned the improvement kata, and I think this is the biggest philosophical leap you'll have to make with me today. And it may be new to some of you, but the basic premise is applying scientific thinking to continuous improvement. For those of you that are familiar with PDCA, so plan, do, check, act, this is that cycle. This is how we move through our experiments. This is how we move towards where we want to be. The idea is that we compare what we think to what actually happens, and it's based on an experimental model that we use in science. So in science, we determine a hypothesis, and then we test to see if that hypothesis is valid, and if it's not, we try other things. In the improvement kata, we get the direction, so that can be a broad overarching vision statement or a metric, but the idea is that it's far off in the future, maybe 2 to 5 years. You grasp the current condition, so figuring out where we are now and how far we are away from that direction or challenge. Then we establish a shorter term target. So those could be monthly goals, weekly goals, yearly goals, anything between where we're trying to get to and where we are now to make things better. And then finally, it's conducting experiments. So you're going to try a lot of stuff. And as a learner, you're coming up with experiments to try. And with some guidance from your coach, we get to see how those improvements, how those changes, how those experiments affect whatever our current condition is and see if it iterates us towards our target condition. And what's important to mark about the improvement kata and the coaching kata in general, and is difficult sometimes in state government, is the idea that an experiment might fail and that's okay. And it's okay under one condition, and that's that you learn from that failure. In a recent coaching experience that I had, the learner was ready to try an approach to gather information where she would be soliciting a bunch of historical documents and coming through them in search of very specific information. And I encouraged her to go ahead and try it. And she did, and found it miserable. But while she was doing it, she realized, why am I going to these historical documents when I can just go to the people that are running these systems and ask them the questions directly? I can get all the same information, and it will be more up to date than combing through these historical documents. And it was a aha moment that she might have never had if she hadn't been pushing herself to go through the original experiment. And it's all about risk. So if we understand what could go wrong if an experiment goes wrong, and it's an acceptable level of risk in terms of what we might gain, either in terms of improvements or learning, then it might be worth trying. And that's sort of the leap of faith you have to take with me and the coaching kata. All right. So we're going to go into a little bit more understanding the improvement kata and coaching. So we'll just go ahead and watch this video together. I'll wait for a couple moments after the video is done. Oh, I forgot to hit a checkbox. All right, so just a point of reference. Whenever any of you are sharing your screen, you'll notice the sharing button here. When you choose to share your screen, there's a little checkbox that says Share System Audio. Make sure you have that selected. It's very easy to forget, as I have multiple times, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to share, click that checkbox, and then share my screen. All right, now you'll actually be able to hear the video that I'm going to share. After this video, I'll pause for a couple minutes and ask for any questions, because we'll be going through a lot real quick.
So the point is, the implementation-oriented or the results-oriented management approach is not so well suited to meeting challenges, right? Here we are today. Here's where we want to get, but we can only see so far, right? Yet back here, where you see the eye, back here, this is where we make the plan, right? But a plan is like a flashlight. Let's say the flashlight only shines this far. We can only see this far into the darkness. We want to go there. How do we see further? If we have this flashlight in our hand, how do we see further? Take a step, right? So you take a few steps, and then, oh, there are things here we didn't know or see back here when we were making the plan, right? So if you can't see all the way, it's not implementation. It's a different style of working. It's the fundamental pattern that Toyota teaches. Understand the direction. Where are we trying to go? What's the challenge we are trying to meet? This can be anywhere from 1 to 3 years out there. This is, what are we trying to get to? Grasp the current condition, and then establish a target condition. Don't start a bunch of activity before you have a target condition. If you really want to rally a group of people, first you have to figure out where you want to go. Don't do random improvements and wastes. So this is figure out where you want to go, then it kind of shifts gears, and then they essentially iterate, or in the language of Lean, PDCA, experiment toward that target condition. If you look behind the A3, if you look behind practical problem solving, if you look behind Toyota business practices, if you look behind quality circles, you will find this pattern. This improvement, we call it the improvement kata. Again, Toyota has no words for this. We've just opened the door for managers to walk through their company. I don't care what team you go to, and you can say, hey, what are you guys trying to achieve? Where are you now? What obstacles are you facing? Which one of those obstacles are you addressing right now? What's your next experiment? And how quickly can we see what we've learned from taking that experiment? And then you go over here to this team, they're working on something completely different, but the manager can say the same thing. What are you guys trying to achieve? Where are you now? Please show me. Show me the data. Show me the facts. What obstacles are currently preventing you from achieving that objective? Which one obstacle are you addressing now? And what's your next experiment? And when can we see what we've learned from doing that experiment? You can ask the same 5 questions everywhere. The first thing that happens is the coach tries to understand how the learner is thinking. And the only way to do that is to have the learner say or do something. So the Toyota manager will say, take a look at this problem and tell me what you think. Take this blank sheet of paper and write your ideas down here. And then they do something kind of unusual. They shut up. And they just don't say anything. And then the learner comes back and says, I think we should do this. Or I see the situation this way. And by doing that, the coach can then see, how is the learner thinking? And then, now it's possible to compare, is the learner here or is the learner here, right? So the second step is to compare the learner's way of thinking and acting with the desired pattern specified by the improvement kata. So now the coach is in a judging mode. And then number 3, introduce a course adjustment if necessary. So now the coach is in an instructing or guiding mode. And I think this picture from music captures it perfectly. Play a few bars for me. I see you're holding the bow wrong. But the teacher would have to know how to hold the bow and then introduce the course correction so that the practice happens so that the neurons develop this pattern. The improvement kata gives you something to hang on to in the uncertainty zone. If people are accustomed to making a plan and carrying out that plan, right, you get a certain sense of self-efficacy from that. If you're going to take that away and say, you know what, we don't really know how it's going to go between here and there, if you take that away from people, you have to give them something else. You can't take that away and expect them to be comfortable. So essentially, I think what Toyota is doing is saying, we can't predict what the path will be, so we don't want you to hang on to the plan. Look, Toyota plans very carefully and in detail, but they have this odd ability to make a plan, but then view the plan as a hypothesis and continue to adjust along the way based on what they're learning. So what they say is, you can't get your confidence from the plan, so instead you're going to get your confidence, or self-efficacy is probably a better word, from practicing this routine that makes you good, more effective at navigating this territory. And the more you practice it, the more comfortable you get, the larger the challenges you can handle. That's essentially what they're trying to do. And I think I think that's what we can do as a society as a whole.
Right, that is Mike Rother, the author of Toyota Kata. Um, while that video was running, it occurred to me that I hadn't actually introduced myself. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John Sears. I'm the lean coordinator for the DEC, and today we're talking about the improvement kata. So any questions on that video before we move on? Okay. So that was really interesting, and for a very brief time on that video, they showed these 5 questions. And these are questions that the coach asks of the learner of what is the target condition, what is your actual condition, what obstacles are preventing you from reaching the target condition, which one are you addressing now, what is your next step, and what have we learned from taking that step. So those are the 5 main questions. Once experiments have been done and you ask about the actual condition, you can reflect on the last step. So what did you plan? What did you expect? What actually happened? And what did you learn? A lot of times, and I know I've had this experience, when you propose an idea to someone and they hadn't thought about it very much and the answer is no, that feels really bad. And what's great about the coaching kata is it puts the driver's seat in the learner's control. So the learner picks what we do, what we try, and how it goes. And sometimes it's a great idea, and sometimes it's not a great idea. But because you're going through these steps every time, you're figuring out whether the improvements are actually measured, or if it didn't come out the way you expected it to go, you're talking about why it didn't, and you're learning from that experience. I hear someone unmute. Did someone have a question? Okay. I apologize. I can't look at the text chat right now. So if there are any questions in there, you'll have to use audio to chat. All right. So how do we keep track of that learning? So you can use a learner's board. The way I've done it is I basically took this, and I have to remake a different version of this for one that I like better. But I've put it in OneNote, and I'm taking notes over it, and you'll get to see what that looks like a little bit later. But it's basically used to track the various elements of the coaching kata. So we're talking about the target condition, the current condition, the experiments that we run, because as you iterate over this, you will run lots of experiments, and the obstacles will compile, and you'll want to work at overcoming those obstacles. And I have a lot of fun crossing those off as our experiments meet those challenges. So it allows you to mark your progress towards your overall challenge, and it records the learning that is being shared between the coach and the learner. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to run into another video, and the coach, it's going to show you what the coach learner interaction can look like. Now they're going to be sticking very strictly to the card. There's a two-faced card that is this information, and it's great for a first step to read through and make sure you're asking all of these questions. But also part of being a coach is having your own unique style and asking these questions in ways that are conversational, that if the conversation veers slightly off from one of these questions, that you can get things back on there without having to refer to the card and asking strictly what's on the card. And it's also worth adding that this experience is over very quickly. So currently I have 1 week check-ins with all the people that I'm coaching, because I'm not any of these people's supervisors. And we have a half an hour set up, but we rarely use the entire half hour. And you get to see why it's so quick as we put the coaching kata in action.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Dwayne.
Good to see you again. Really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me this morning. I really would like to just get going and understanding a little bit more about the challenge that you and the rest of the site are working to accomplish.
Our challenge in the Primaxin value stream is to increase our production rate by 500 trays per shift to 600 trays per shift. And we need to accomplish this with our existing headcount.
Okay, great. So now let's take it down a level and talk a little bit more about how that relates to you and your team. What is the target condition that you're striving to achieve?
Well, supplies inspection, our piece of the value stream, we need to establish a workflow system in this area that's both planned and leveled.
Okay. And by when are you looking to achieve this?
By the end of the year, which is 4 months from now.
Okay. So teach me and tell me a little bit more about how then this target condition relates back to the challenge that you just shared.
Well, we need additional capacity, and we predict that if we can get our work into a planned and level state, then we'll have the capacity to support the value stream challenge.
Okay, very good. So then what is actually happening now?
Currently, our work is 80% unplanned, and it's not leveled.
Okay.
There are a number of interruptions that occur throughout the day that create this unplanned state, and you can see them in this graph here.
Wow, okay. Very good. All right. So let's move on. So then what obstacles do you think are preventing you from achieving your target condition?
We have 4 obstacles that we've identified. One being that deliveries come in batches. We get a large number of batches of materials at one time. Another being interruptions, and in particular, the supplies inspection personnel being interrupted to go back into the warehouse and direct the movement of materials.
Okay.
A third is the occasional high reject rate of particular materials that come in. And the fourth was that everyone on the supplies inspection team is not cross-trained to do all activities.
Okay, very good. Sounds comprehensive. So which one are you addressing now?
Now we're working on the supplies inspection personnel going into the warehouse to direct the movement of materials, the interruptions that activity causes.
Okay, great. So let's take a step back and let's reflect on the last step that you took in order to address this obstacle. Mm-hmm. Let's walk through. So what was the step that you took?
Well, our step was to try to have the receivers in the warehouse direct material movement.
Okay. And what did you expect?
We expected really just to learn what we needed to work on.
Okay.
And to be able to make that transition.
All right. What actually happened, though?
Well, what happened is that the receivers didn't have the sampling plan. They didn't know how to interpret the ANSI tables, so they didn't have the information they needed to direct material movement.
All right. And in the end, what did you learn?
We learned that the receivers need additional information and some instruction.
Okay. So share with me now, if you will, the next step that you plan on taking, your next cycle.
Our next step is to assess the information that the receivers will need to be able to direct material movement.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about how you plan on taking that step.
Well, we currently have a sampling plan that has a lot of information in it, and so we want to go through that and identify which pieces the receivers need for directing material movement.
And who will do that?
I'll probably sit down with that plan and go through and try to determine which pieces of information are needed.
Okay, good. And what do you expect with this step?
Well, we expect to learn what we need to put into a job aid for the receivers.
Okay, great. So then when can we go see what you have learned from taking this next step?
Tomorrow afternoon, we should have identified the information that the receivers need.
Okay, great. Well, Alan, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me this morning, and it sounds like you guys are well on your way. I really encourage you and the team to continue following the scientific process that you're taking. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So those weren't two of the most charismatic people on the planet, but it shows the basic outline of how the coaching kata progresses. And what's great about the coaching kata is you can handle just about any problem. The real trick is it's about developing a mindset and a learning methodology that really helps you solve problems through experimentation and measurement. All right. So we've sort of seen what coaching kata looks like in a vacuum. Let's talk a little bit about what it looks like for us. So the question you need to ask, either for yourself or for someone you know, is are you a candidate interested in professional growth? You can work with coach or manager to identify a challenge that you can own, because one of the things about the improvement kata is that it's very focused on solving a problem, making something better, improvement. You can work on defining that challenge and setting targets with the coach, and then experiment. The most important thing to do is to set a schedule and keep to it. One of the biggest feedback I get from the people that I coach is that one of the biggest values they find is that it's just having the accountability and having someone there regularly to help solve that problem. And for those of you that manage people, it's a great way to interact because it keeps it focused on problem solving and stuff. That part of coaching is also developing relationships. So I don't want to frame it as you sit down, you work through the 5 questions, you pack up and go home, although you can do that. It's also about developing those relationships and having this sort of core to hold things together. And it's very, very important that you set a schedule and you keep to it. Don't say, I don't want to meet this week, I can't meet next week. And if you keep not meeting, then there's that lack of accountability. You're not checking in, you're not learning, you're not ingraining the structures of the improvement kata in the learner. And it's okay to miss a week or so. I've had to miss weeks, especially with all the COVID stuff going on. People's schedules are uncertain, but it is very, very important to stick to that schedule. So right now, I'm the only person with coaching experience in the entire organization. And there are 2 primary ways I see forward to grow the coaching kata, because I believe it's valuable and I believe we can get everyone working to make these improvements and thinking in terms of the improvement kata. And that's by growing more coaches or by getting more people to be coached. So there's 2 main steps that we can do. One is to become a coach. So when I sort of had to develop as a coach, I didn't have any mentors or other coaches that I could learn from for the coaching kata. So what I had to do was subject a couple of my coworkers and say, hey, do you have any problems that you would appreciate me sort of making you my guinea pig? So fortunately, I've got a network of green belts within A&R that I was able to solicit, and I got some great help from them. And they volunteered their time to sort of subject themselves to my learning to be a coach. And in the beginning, I leaned very heavily on the card. As time has gone on, I've moved off the card, but I'm still asking those questions. I'm still collecting data. And learners are still developing and improving things. Fortunately, you don't have to take that step if you are interested in becoming a coach, whether because you're a manager or because you want to share your lean expertise. You can contact me. And the ideal way that this works in an environment is that you have a coach, you have the learner who's being coached, and then you have an apprentice coach. And so with these 3 people, you have your coaching meetings, and that way you are always growing the next lineup of coaches. So you go through an apprenticeship, maybe you start coaching then with a little bit of oversight, and then you're let loose into the world to coach. But I want people prepared to walk into that, and they shouldn't have to subject themselves to what I did, or subject their learners to that experience, quite honestly. Another alternative is to utilize the coaching kata. So if you're not sure about the coaching kata or you have a problem that you need help solving, And big lean projects aren't really the way to go right now when we can't all get together in a room. If you or you know someone is in need of development, we can make an agreement and I'll coach, and we can learn together and solve those problems. I've found coaching to be extremely rewarding, and I treasure the relationships that I've grown while coaching. And I'm also continually impressed by the improvements that I've seen as a result of coaching. But I would just reiterate that it's a partnership. It's an agreement between both the learner and the coach. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what benefits are. We saw in the testimonials that people are really fans of what's been going on, but let's talk a little bit about dollars and cents, what it means to you and the organization. At a base level for the organization, we're talking about improvements. So the Coaching Kata is focused on making those improvements, and they are incremental. They're more agile. So in the video, we saw how conditions change, so you need to be able to change with those changing conditions. But what's also great is because it's experimental and because we're learning from the experiments, there's less of a wind up to a large scale continuous improvement project. So it's not getting 1 million people in a room. It's not doing weeks of data analysis going in. It is not a big 5-day lean event, and it is not then a year or 2 years of implementation. It's get together, focus on a problem, build a little bit of baseline data, but then experiment, experiment, experiment. Try things. Does it make things better? Great, let's build on that. Or no, it didn't, but let's learn from it and let's try something else. So significantly less planning time is needed, and we've been meeting once a week. That's been really great. You can meet more frequently if you're trying to coach someone that you're supervising, I imagine, because right now people are still kind of volunteering their time. But that's a different scenario if you're a manager. And success is easy to measure because every week does it make things better at time? Or if it didn't, why didn't it? We're always learning. And there are also a lot of personal benefits between the coach and the learner. So I've been able to impart a lot of my expertise to solve very specific problems. So the learner's been learning new tools, and I've learned a lot of new tools. Because sometimes the learner will come in and say, I want to try this thing. And I go, I've never heard of that thing, but if you want to try it, let's try it. So you get to see a lot of new approaches. And it really does grow confidence. Some of the learners that I work with are planners by nature, and they will plan and plan and plan. And there will be an analysis paralysis of like, here are a dozen things I could do. I don't know which one I should do. And it's like, well, let's try one and let's see how it goes. And everyone that I've worked with on this has found a depth of confidence that they didn't know. And they're excited to try a new experiment and see how it goes. And my favorite part is that it develops the understanding of the work and the person. So I've learned a lot about some of the work that the people I'm coaching are doing. And I've learned a lot about them as a person because I try and be there as a coach and be there as a partner in helping them solve these difficult problems. And it's one of the favorite parts of the things that I do now. And I'm always looking for more coaching experiences and to grow coaching because I do truly believe in it. If you're interested in becoming a coach, it's worth noting that it's also a great way to grow your leadership skills. If you're not currently a manager, there aren't a lot of avenues for growing your leadership, and this really is a leadership exercise because a lot of times it's very tempting to tell people what the solution to their problem is or to be the one that solves those problems for people. And I know because it's tempting for me too. But the important thing about the improvement kata is that it's teaching people to solve their own problems. It's teaching them a way of thinking and a methodology that will allow them to solve those problems. And adopting that mindset and growing people instead of solving problems for them, it's teaching them to fish versus fishing and handing them a fish. And the Coaching Kata itself forms a fulcrum for lifting the entire organization. If you can develop an entire network of coaches, sort of like how we have a network of green belts, but more robust, and sharing that expertise in a way that we don't often get to, develops a more agile organization and one that grows up an entire array of problem solvers, not thinking of our green belts as they can come in and solve the problems, but they can allow us to all become better problem solvers. And that's sort of what you can hope to gain out of utilizing the Coaching Kata. So I thought it would be helpful if we walked through a little bit about the Coaching Kata with a problem that I think you are all fairly well informed with enough by now. And that is, we are going to, I'll sort of show you how I utilize this tool. There we go. So what we have here, and I'm going to go ahead and pin that so that we can see the whole screen. Can everyone see my OneNote? I can't actually see things in the text chat now, so if you use the text chat, I will be able to see what you say. Just like I saw Jill's question, what kinds of projects do you think this approach might be useful for? All right, so you can use the Coaching Kata on any kind of problem. The important thing is that you're using measurement to know when you're moving in the right direction and setting that goal. There are tons of logistics issues, but it's about choosing how you want to measure whether you're being more successful or less successful. So if you start documenting the number of issues that pop up, and then you want to try experimenting approaches to solve that problem, you can see over the week if those numbers of problems that crop up go down. For example, our challenge is the Coaching Kata is not ingrained in our DEC culture, so we want to develop a coaching pipeline. And ideally, we'd like to have some sort of pipeline established by September 2020. Our current condition is that we have one experienced coach. We've got 5 people that have some experience outside of this training with Coaching Kata, in that they are the learners that I'm currently coaching. The Coaching Kata training itself, or understanding of the Coaching Kata, has gone out to anyone that has attended Justin's Orange Belt, which is a bit more high level than what we talk about today. And then everyone that's attended this training. So those are people that know what Coaching Kata is, but understanding why it's important and how it can be valuable is still something we have to understand. So feel free to unmute yourselves, and I know this is going to be kind of a free-for-all, but what are some realistic target conditions that we should be aspiring to if we're developing a coaching pipeline? Does anyone have any suggestions? You can unmute or put your answer in the text chat. Anyone?
John, it's Maria. Just out of clarification here, you said that the target condition achieved by September 2020 was to develop a coaching pipeline, right? Is that what September 2020 deadline date is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got some metrics in the current condition. What do some of those metrics need to look like if we've developed a coaching pipeline by September 2020?
So to have more than one experienced coach, so those 5 learners that are currently being taught to become experienced coaches by that time, is that what you're after?
Well, so those learners are interested in growth and are working on projects. They're not learning necessarily to become coaches. Right now, I guess I can add this. I have 0 apprentice coaches. All right, so John Fay suggests developing understanding. Yeah, I'd like to have a metric. So what constitutes a sufficient understanding organizationally of the Coaching Kata, and what should we aspire to do? Because in our first training, we had 10 or 11, 15 people, actually, 15 people. We've got 22 people in the well, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 people in today's training. So I can update this. So let's call it 45 to be generous. I don't know how many people are managers anymore because I don't know how many people are. Number of experienced coaches from 1 to 3. Okay, that's a great idea. Yep, so we would definitely need 3 to 4 apprentice coaches. Because I would like apprenticeship to work independently by end of 2021. That's great. Thanks, Jill. Those are awesome. In multiple agencies. Oh, now you're getting ambitious. Oh, I am aware that there are folks that are trained in coaching elsewhere in the organization. There was for a while. So Brenda asked if there are other folks who have been trained in coaching. So I know for a fact that for a while CAPS was doing coaching. I don't know if they're still providing those services, but I'm sure some of those trainers are still trained in that. And I'm sure lots of you have received either coaching or had some coaching background. And I think that is incredible. And I would encourage you to use that experience and bring it to the improvement kata. Because a lot of times, what's great about the coaching kata is that it's focused on improvements with a benefit of also like being a coaching experience and developing a learner. But it has very clear, I'm trying to think of the right word for this, because it's improvement focused, like there's a very clear improvement, a very clear measurable that like speaks more broadly than coaching is extremely valuable. And I would encourage anyone to get coaching and grow yourselves however you can. But those personal goals and achievements often you can't put those on a poster and tell everyone about them, you know? And this is really great because it sort of fits those two balances. If I, in my organization, decided that I just wanted to be a coach and I wanted to coach people, and then I went and I got a bunch of experience as a coach, and then said, I am interested in coaching for everyone, I don't know that anyone would necessarily come to me and be like, please coach me, John. But if I said, I can help you make your processes better, and all it takes is sitting down with me and having regular conversations, that's a lot more accessible to people. And there are obvious benefits that we've already talked about. All right, so what are some experiments we can run to try and get this working in multiple agencies, functioning independently by 2021, have an array of apprentice coaches, and have a number of experienced coaches by September 2020? Think about what are some things that can take our current condition to our target condition. And feel free to throw ideas out there. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. The idea is that it's something we can try. All right. So I'm not hearing anything, but what I can go ahead and do is we can do our trainings, right? So this training that you are all attending right now will be available on Microsoft Stream. I think I already sent the link to that, but I will send it around again. Present at DMT, okay. Present to leadership. Identify all CI project managers in Vermont Gov. Reach out to them for additional targeted trainings on specific problems. What do you mean by CI project managers? I just want to make sure I am understanding what you're suggesting. Because it's continuous improvement PM. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how things are running for you, but we tend not to have set people in that role. It's just sort of an adopted thing, and it's a whole other thing. Yeah, okay, that's great. So tie coaching into the ambassadorship. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I might have suggested that to Justin in the past, but I think that's a great approach. Those are some great ideas. All right. What are some obstacles we might experience in our attempt to grow a coaching pipeline? I know you guys can brainstorm this. This is the most fun part, is brainstorming all the obstacles that we then have to overcome. Time, value, yep. Pretty much our standard lean concerns, right? Buy-in. Yep. And, you know, I'm very concerned with buy-in. It's one of the reasons that when we started off this training, I started off with those reviews, because approval from leadership is always a problem. That's true. But it is paying dividends in terms of people, and it's been multiple times since I have started coaching with individuals that I have heard about great progress that somebody's making on a thing. And it's a wonderful surprise to them. That's like, oh, I've been coaching with that person on that specific project. That's why they're making such big strides. And, you know, it may be that coaching, all it really does in a given session is providing space for someone to think about a problem, and that there's someone that's willing to ask questions and bounce ideas off of. And that's a definite value to seeing improvements. I know a lot of the people that I'm coaching have been told, like, here's a thing I want you to do, but you don't have the time to think about it or the ability to focus on it because your ideas all over the place, and you might have like a dozen ideas for how to proceed, or to know if you succeeded at doing that thing. Coaching is a great way to get past that. If you have a problem and you can't solve it yourself, and you're not sure who to talk to, maybe try coaching. I can't promise that it'll solve the problem, but sometimes it's great just to talk through it with somebody else and figure out if somebody else can imagine an approach to solving that problem. All right, so with our last couple of minutes, I want to open things up just to broad questions about coaching, or the exercise we did, whatever you have based on what we've talked about today. I think I saw something from John Fay earlier. I think we talked about that. You can feel free to unmute and ask questions, or drop them in the chat, and I will talk about them. Is anyone interested in being coached or becoming a coach? I have even more testimonials that I didn't include in 2 slides worth of testimonials. Time commitment is an issue. Well, can you coach yourself? That's a funny question, and I would encourage you to join next Monday's training on bite-sized lean, because we're going to be talking about a way that you can coach yourself. And I just want to leave that as a teaser. So come to next Monday's training at 10 a.m., same link. Time commitment is an issue. So I just want to say one of the nice things about this is that the time commitment is extremely minimal. So our weekly check-ins, and these are weekly check-ins, are they're currently set up for a half an hour. Rarely do they take that long. They usually run somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes long. And that's the only time commitment as far as checking in. And then it's just making the improvement. It's running the experiments. So if you have a project that you're already working on and you can't figure out, it's not actually much of a time commitment at all. It's just the 10 to 20 minutes once a week. If it's a project that you've been meaning to work on but can't figure out the next steps to, it's a great way to know to make space for that. But generally speaking, the people that have been working on these projects with me are spending less than 2 hours a week on whatever they're improving. These are small little experiments. What's great is that you can just try them and see how they go. It hasn't been a tremendous time commitment. And I think that's one of the strongest points to the Coaching Kata, is that it makes improvements without tremendous time commitments from large numbers of staff. The only trick is that you have to be working on something that you have enough authority over and control over to actually experiment on and try those experiments. All right, so I've got a bunch of people that are interested in about coaching. I am currently coaching Marcella Dent in A&R, Teresa Petzold in DEC, Megan Cousineau in DEC. I am coaching Bennett Leon in DEC, and I am coaching Amy Galford in DEC. So they're all green belts and all in DEC, but they don't have to be green belts. They can be anyone. Those are the folks that I'm working with right now. Yeah, so I think that is all of the concerns folks had, and I got a couple people that I can reach out to about becoming coaches, I presume. Tracy, Aaron, Christina, Maria, interested in becoming coaches or being coached? Because I can do either. And I view every coaching session I do that doesn't have someone also learning to be coached is kind of a missed opportunity. Okay, great. So I will be in touch with all of you at some point. I've got a lot of, all right. I understand time is a real commitment. So I'll just reiterate like that the time commitment to this has been much, much less than lean in general. And really only the time commitment is coming from me and having 5 people that I'm coaching. All right, so great. Thank you all for attending today's training. Reminder that next week, every Monday at 10 a.m., we'll be doing another training session. This one will be on bite-sized lean. So it's about small tools that we can use either individually or in small groups to bring continuous improvements. So thank you all for your time, and feel free to chat message me, any of you, if you have more questions or concerns. And the training will be available on Microsoft Stream. Thank you all so much, and you all have a great day.